Is Dylan Cease officially washed up? What's Elly De La Cruz's outlook heading into the fantasy baseball playoffs? Join me today as I talk about keeper cut players heading into this weekend on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Sports Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino. You can find me on Twitter at DomMartinoFB. As you can see, I'm riding solo tonight. My brother, Matt Arnay, has the day off. But if you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, I would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. Also, if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It subscribes to the channel, also gives you a notification every time we drop a new episode. And lastly, but most importantly, subscribe to us on the Subtext website. It's a one-on-one, in-depth, personalized experience through text messaging on Subtext. You get alerts right to your phone with prospect call-ups. We've had a couple of those recently. You would have got those right away to your phone, injury alerts, and just much more than we can offer in this 30-minute podcast. And guys, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets back guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. And Locked On Fantasy Baseball fans, we have a fully loaded episode for you today. As always, let us be your team secret weapon as we talk keeper cut players heading into the fantasy baseball playoffs. And guys, this is the time of year, I keep throwing out that term, trim the fat. And you have to at least consider it. In deeper leagues, it's a different circumstance. There's not much out there on the waiver wire. But in leagues where there is a lot out there on the waiver wires, you really got to consider making these moves because it's the difference between winning and losing. And you really don't want to be stuck riding this guy just because you drafted him high and stuff like that. I really think, you have to consider moving on, especially from some of these players. And I'm going to walk you through a few of them today. And if there's any specific players you guys have questions about, once again, join us on Subtext. You have 24/7 access to Matt and I, and we can answer those questions in more depth on Subtext. But let's get the show started. Let's talk about Dylan Cease. And boy, oh boy, has Dylan Cease been putrid of late. Through his last 30 days, his last 29 innings, Cease has 33 strikeouts, an 8.07 ERA, and a 1.97 whip. And, going into the year, Matt and I we started tampering off of Dylan Cease. I think we both had him outside of our, top 10 starting pitchers where, a lot of people were very, very high on him coming into this year after his, monster season last year. And it's been a tough season. I'll give you even Cease's numbers on the year. 28 starts for Dylan Cease, 4.91 ERA, 148 innings. And through those 148 innings, he has 71 walks, 176 strikeouts, which is nice. And the whip is a 1.46. I mean, last year was, a career high. Everything went right for Cease. I know he left a lot of runners on base last year. A lot of those runners, unfortunately, have scored this year for him. So it's just a tough ride with Cease. I will say this, his next two starts look like they line up against the Kansas City Royals, who are 1-9 in their last 10. They've been absolutely putrid again outside of a hot Bobby Witt. Not really much going on there. MJ Melendez has come back down to life come back down to earth, and not much more going on there. So I would at least consider throwing Cease out there if I'm in a desperate situation in those deeper leagues. But if you have other options out there, you can definitely also consider benching him. Fortunately, I'm not a Dylan Cease owner, so I don't have to make that call. But if I did have him on my team and I'm heading into the playoffs in a tough matchup, it's really, really tough for me to consider throwing him out there unless I have some guys that are going to put up strong, ERAs and whips to supplement Cease's potential blow up. He will get to strikeouts. Win potential is not very high. So the strikeouts is really the only categories he's going to help you in. So if he's your main source of strikeouts, you can consider riding him out there. But if you want to maintain ratios, I really wouldn't mind putting Dylan Cease on the bench heading into, the playoffs next week. But let's move on here. Let's talk about this next guy. Let's talk Andrew Abbott. And Andrew Abbott, just another guy that has really like slowed down of late. He started off like a house on fire, was really, monstrous through his, I think, like first like 6-7 starts. But since then, he's really tampered off. I'm going to give you his last 30 days. 23 innings, 28 strikeouts, 6.08 ERA, a 1.73 whip for Abbott. He's 73% owned right now. He's a guy probably rising up my drop-o-meter as well. Honestly, he gets the Cubs in his next outing. After that, he gets St. Louis. St. Louis is a better matchup than the Cubs. Cubs have been, pretty strong, here through this season. Really surprised a lot of people. So with that being said, they're 7-3 in the last 10. The Cubs are. Abbott's he's not blowing anybody away anymore. He's not fooling anybody. This fastball is not really great. Kind of relies on that, breaking stuff to really get him by. His ERA is a 3.35 on the year. His FIP is a 3.94. FIP is fielding independent pitching. If you're not, familiar with it, it's just kind of an ERA indicator. Tells you where the ERA should be rather than where it is at the moment. So with Abbott, if you got a hot guy out there, if you got a Cole Reagans or, somebody along the lines of that, I really wouldn't mind dropping Abbott at this point. And, the next start is at home in, Great American Ballpark, Great American Small Park, otherwise known as, and then the one against St. Louis after that, also at home for Abbott. So if you have better options out there on your waiver wire, I definitely would consider dropping Andrew Abbott at this point. Another guy, strikeout upside is pretty solid. But, those numbers are creeping up on the year. He's already up to a 3.35 ERA, a 1.22 whip. So definitely somebody you consider dropping there as well. Like I said, this time of year, you really want to trim that fat. You want to get the hot hands into your lineup. And once again, throwing out there, keeper dynasty, it's a totally different story. You definitely want to at least, if you're like a dynasty league where you keep most of your team, Cease and Abbott are guys you might want to keep on your team going into next year. The outlook might be a little bit better than it has been, in the second half here. Redraft leagues, time to cut the bait. What are you holding on for? There's not really a reason to unless you're playing in a deep league and there's nothing out there on your waiver wire. Let's keep things pushing, though. Let's talk about Bryce Miller. Bryce Miller, another, young pitcher that started off year on fire, and he's kind of come back down to earth since August 13th. He's had 2 decent starts, but in those starts against Baltimore and against Houston on August 13th and 18th for Bryce Miller, only 2 strikeouts. The one against Baltimore, the whip was a little bit high. He did suppress runs in both of those outings. And then his last 2, he only went 4 innings against a Kansas City team that's not very good. He did have 6 strikeouts, gave up a bunch of runs, very high whip. And then against Oakland, he did throw 6 innings, 5 strikeouts, gave up a bunch of runs. The whip was a 1.17, so it's a little higher than you would like it to be. Numbers on the year for Bryce Miller creeping up there too. 3.93 ERA, 1.05 whip, 107 innings. The strikeouts are, under a K per 9 at 100. So with Bryce Miller, just another guy, that's 78% owned that, going into your playoffs, let's double check his matchups there and see if they're looking good or not. He gets Cincinnati once again at, Great American Small Park. And then after that, Tampa Bay. I like those matchups a little bit better than Abbott's. Cincinnati slowed down a lot of late. We got a Cincinnati Red on this episode that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So Bryce Miller is an option. You can kind of ride him out there if you want to. But once again, these are just guys that have really slowed down. Maybe you don't necessarily have to drop all of them if you don't have a lot on your team, but you can consider benching them. At least consider benching them. It's just a tough time of year to really make these calls. And you have to look at your team. You have to look at the team that you're going to be playing in the playoffs and try and, level up with them. If they have a lot of pitching and you don't, maybe you have to start these guys. So just really know your team, know the matchup, and really take some thought into what you're doing here in the fantasy baseball playoffs. But before we move on and talk about a Cleveland Guardian pitcher who injured himself, another injured pitcher, but this one is for Cincinnati. And then we have a really big name. I think I teased him at the top, and it's Elly De La Cruz, really slowed down of late. We're going to talk about him as well. But first, I need to talk to you guys about our today's sponsor, FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket. And guys, that is a bargain. It's from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use and can be on everything. You can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. And dear everydayers and new listeners, we have an incredible opportunity for you to support the show and enjoy some fantastic perks along the way, introducing our Diamond Club on the Subtext website. By becoming a member, you not only contribute to the show's success, but also gain access to exclusive benefits. Get your hands on waiver wire rankings, call-up alerts, injury updates, instant reactions, and enjoy direct access to us for all of your burning fantasy baseball questions. Plus, you can try it out completely free for 14 days. Your support means the world to Matt and I, and we can't wait to connect with you on this exciting journey. Join our Diamond Club on the Subtext website today, and let's take your fantasy baseball experience to new heights. Guys, last opportunity, last chance. I'm going to call it out because we're going to be doing the raffle, which ends on September 1st. So if you're in the Diamond Club on September 1st, you're going to be in that raffle. Hop on in. You got your 14 days free. You get the chance to join us in our listener league, see how Matt and I play fantasy baseball. We've been really, really good this year. A lot of good calls. If you've been following us all year, I'm sure you're doing pretty good in fantasy. And just come play with us. We get to interact with you guys and get to know more about you fans. And it's just a good time in the Subtext Club. In the Diamond Club on Subtext. So, all right, guys, I promised you, a Cleveland Guardian, and it's another young guy, and that's sometimes what happens with these young guys. They start to tamper off, and it's Gavin Williams. And unfortunately, Gavin Williams, took a little tumble in his last one, has the knee issue. I originally thought it was worse than it is. They said, if he hadn't been at his, innings limits, they would have left him in. That's what Terry Francona was saying anyway. He said that he would have left him in if he wasn't really at, career high innings mark. But fortunately he is. And Terry Francona said, hey, listen, I didn't want to risk that with this young kid because on the season, he's already thrown 125 innings and he threw 115 last year. So he's not really, really far over, but you don't want to risk it with a kid that's got the talent like Gavin Williams. And he's slowed down of late too. His last, his last couple of starts really didn't look so good. He really got blown up against the Dodgers, but, Dodgers are going to Dodger, and they're going to, hit almost everybody. But then the one against Detroit before that was pretty bad too. But before that, he had two really good starts. So I'm not dropping Gavin Williams yet. I want to see what the word is on the injury. Out of everyone we spoke about so far, maybe besides Cease, because Cease is just, there's so much upside there, and we saw it last year. But Gavin Williams is somebody I'm really holding on to at the moment. I kind of want to see the news on this injury. If it's really bad and they say, hey, he's going to miss some time, then you could cut him. But if Gavin Williams is going to be out there and pitching, I at least want to give him the chance to see if this upside is legit. Kid's got really, really, really good stuff. Very high-end prospect. Was probably one of the best pitchers in the minors coming into this year. It looks like he was lined up to get Minnesota and San Francisco in his next two. So that looks really, really good. Really, really enticing. Gavin Williams, pretty much a hold for me right now, even with the knee issue. I just kind of want to see the news on him before I say, all right, I'm outright cutting Gavin Williams. But unfortunately, this next guy, 100% drop. It's Nick Lodolo. I was super excited for Lodolo, not coming into the year, but, coming off of the injury. He looked really good in his minor league starts. But you know what? He's got that lower leg tibia issue, and he has been officially ruled out for the rest of 2023. Nick Lodolo, 41% owned. He's officially a drop if you were waiting for him to come back. We've given out some really good waiver wire guys. Mason Miller is on his way back. Kyle Wright's on his way back. If any of those guys, Walker Buehler's on his way back. If any of those guys are out there in your leagues, you can totally make that swap. You can swap out Lodolo and grab any of those other guys I mentioned. We might do one more stash episode this year. I'm not 100% sure. I got to touch base with Matt on that and see where we're at. So we might have some stashes for you guys next week, but it's not 100% guaranteed. Once again, if you're in the Subtext Club, you can ask any question on any stashes that you want, and we will get back to you guys on it literally as soon as possible. But let's keep things pushing. I have another Cincinnati Red for you guys, and it's Mr. Elly De La Cruz, Mr. Superstar himself. But he hasn't looked like much of the superstar that he was when he got first called up. But he's still been good. Like, the numbers on the year for Elly are very, very good. And let me just make this clear, before I get any hate on this, I'm not dropping Elly De La Cruz anywhere. If we're firing up the drop-o-meter on Elly, it's a 0. But he's just been mediocre of late. The counting stats look decent with 17 runs in his last 106 at-bats, 4 homers, 14 RBIs, 6 steals, but the batting average is a 198. So he's really, hurting you in that batting average department. The rest of the counting stats, as I said, aren't really bad. They're not blowing you away anymore. But that's what happens in the major leagues. You come out, the pitchers really aren't super familiar with you, what kind of pitches you like to hit, all that stuff. And, you can dominate. And then when the pitchers learn, hey, he can't hit low and away, he can't hit the high fastball, that you need to adjust back to that. And you need to learn how to, adapt to those pitches that can't think you hit. You think they think you can't hit, and make that adjustment. Elly De La Cruz is somebody that can definitely do that. Heading into the fantasy baseball playoffs, he's in your lineup almost every day. Unless you're in like a really shallow league, or a really, really deep league, like a 15-man or plus, or NL only or something like that, where, you kind of have to keep him in your lineup. You can maybe make those adjustments and, throw somebody else in there if you need to. But at that point, you probably don't have better options. So I think Elly De La Cruz is going to be a staple in your lineup through the fantasy baseball playoffs. You kind of have to ride the wave with him, because the upside is absolutely tremendous for Elly. Let's talk about that 2022 minor league season where he had 121 games, 471 at-bats, 87 runs, 31 doubles, 9 triples, 28 homers, 86 RBIs, 47 steals, and he had 304. So that's Elly De La Cruz's upside if you didn't already know and you haven't seen all the highlights of this kid, not only offensively but defensively as well. He's a smart baseball player. I don't know if anyone saw him stole home, when he first got called up. So he has the baseball IQ. I think this is somebody that adjusts. And if you're worried about Elly De La Cruz, I really wouldn't be too worried about him, because just the upside is so tremendous that you have to ride the wave with him. Once again, drop-o-meter on Elly De La Cruz, an absolute 0. Let's move on to another young, budding superstar. Let's talk about Riley Greene. Matt and I were really big on Riley Greene coming into the year, especially Matt. I know Riley Greene was somebody that Matt was definitely super high on coming into the year. Another guy that's just slowed down a lot, and Spencer Torkelson, another guy that's slowed down a lot. Riley Greene's last 30 days, not including today, because he actually went 2 for 5 today against my Yankees. Riley Greene, 22 for 100, which is a 220 batting average, 9 runs, 3 homers, 10 RBIs, no steals. He's still hitting second in that Detroit lineup, and, they have some decent bats over there with, Kerry Carpenter, who's actually still been hot. As I mentioned, Torkelson, who's been up and down, slowed down again of late. Parker Meadows has looked really good in that lineup. And you got old the El Mago, Javier Baez, who's kind of just, kind of falling off the wagon at this point. So Riley Greene, I'm not really ready to drop him yet, because, he had that stretch there, during the middle of the season where he's really, really, really good. He had that batting average up over at 300 at some point. The runs are good. The counting stats as far as the home runs and the steals aren't really great. And, 34 RBIs isn't great. I mean, 61% owned. If you have better options on your waiver wire, yeah, I might go out there and make that move. But in most leagues, I don't know if you're going to do better than Riley Greene. He had that 2 for 5 game today, as I mentioned, against the Yankees, hitting second in that lineup. So the runs are going to be good. I just wish he stole a little bit more. I know he has the speed to do it. I just don't know if they're not letting him or what the case is there with Riley Greene not stealing bases. I think Riley Greene next year is somebody that you're going to want on your fantasy team, because, he really showed the upside this year. He was able to, adjust to big league pitching after a down, the year last year in his rookie season. He's, a big boy at 6'3", 200 pounds. He had a really, really good, great minor league track record. He had the season in 2021, 24 homers, 16 steals, 301 batting average. So, he's got the power. He's got the speed. I would just really love for him to show off a little bit more of that combo here in the majors. Gonna have to ride him out. Another guy you could throw on your bench for the fantasy baseball players, but just another guy I really don't think I'm dropping. If I had to fire up the drop-o-meter on Riley Greene, probably like a 3. If there's really like way better options out there on your waiver wire, maybe you make that move. But otherwise, I think this kid still has the upside that you want in your lineup during the fantasy baseball playoffs. Let's keep it pushing here. And this guy's actually a little higher on my drop-o-meter. It's Ty France. Everybody loves Ty France. Last year, he made the all-star team, and he had a pretty strong year. This year hasn't really, lived up to that season last year. He's been, like I said, pretty bad this year. In 488 at-bats, 68 runs, which is nice, but, 10 homers, 51 RBIs, 1 steal, 254 batting average. I really think he's a guy that you could feel safe dropping at this point. He's 67% owned. To me, that's way too high. there is way too many good options on the waiver wire in most leagues. Check out our waiver wire shows if you're looking for specific names, but I would drop Ty France and just get him out of my way. You got Davis Schneider out there we've talked about. I really don't want to give away too many other names. We have our, episode we did yesterday. You can go check out waiver wire for week 21 2.0. Check that episode out if you want specific names, but Ty France, I really think it's just time to cut bait on him. But before I move on and I give you these last couple of names, we're going to talk about a St. Louis player, another young gun that kind of just, I slowed down, and I'm going to talk to you about a Cleveland Guardian. I got one more quick break for you guys. And thank you guys for bearing through that break, and I'm back. Like I said, I only got 2 more names left for you. I'll try and give you a little in-depth analysis here because, this episode really isn't going to be too long here. I got Nolan Gorman up for you guys next. And Nolan Gorman is, somebody who has so much potential, especially in the power department. But he was injured a bit this year, and he really didn't get to, live up to the hype the way we wanted to. But, a decent season here for Gorman, 370 at-bats, 50 runs, 24 homers, 68 RBIs, 6 steals, and a 235 batting average. The 24 homers and 370 at-bats is really nice. Gorman, I think he's going to have some seasons coming up in the future where he hits 35-plus homers. That's very reasonable to expect from a kid with this showing this kind of power at 23. I think he has all-star upside. I don't know if the batting average is ever really going to be great for Gorman, especially because the plate discipline isn't really good. Guy strikes out a lot, doesn't really walk a lot. So I could see him being like, a 240, 250 hitter in his prime, very Max Muncy-ish, where, he's going to have some 35 homer seasons with, some good RBIs, and he's got a little bit of speed there too. You're talking about maybe like a 10 steal guy in his prime. The runs and, the RBIs looking nice too. 68 RBIs and 370 at-bats, 109 games is very, very nice. It just depends what St. Louis wants to do. They need to work on, rebuilding and just really like play with their young guys. Excuse me, folks. I got to sneeze. Oh, sorry about that, guys. I had to let that sneeze out of there. I think that thing was building up on me. I couldn't keep doing it any longer. But as I said with Gorman here, a lot of upside. As far as dropping him goes, he's 61% owned. I just don't know, guys. He's a tough one for me. They've been moving him all over the lineup since he's been back with the injury. He hit 4th, 6th twice, and then 3rd on the 29th. He sat out, Wednesday's game against the Southpaw Rich Hill, and he's won for his last 12 with 2 walks and 10 strikeouts in those first 4 games back. I mean, like, once again, I hate to keep saying the same name, but if Davis Schneider's out there, I might make that move. I might cut Gorman for Davis Schneider. Gorman is just somebody I'm not holding on to unless I really need like home runs and RBIs. And then if you could sacrifice the batting average and you don't really need speed, maybe you hold on to Gorman and see what's there. But once again, this is the time to trim the fat and get the hot hand into your lineup. And I will throw this out there. I know I've kind of been saying this, but this is a kind of a different way to say it. Like, I'm not opposed to like a guy like Gorman, drop him for Davis Schneider going into the first round of the playoffs. If Davis Schneider doesn't do anything that first week, okay, find the next hot hand going into the next round if you make it to the next round. And I have no problem and especially in redraft, just dropping almost anybody to get the hot hand into my lineup because it's the hot hand that's going to help you win. No sense into holding on to somebody that hasn't done anything in the last 3 weeks that doesn't look like they're going to do anything going forward. And just say, hold on, maybe the upside. It's not the time to do that. It's the time to get these hot bats into your lineup. And, if you stay here with us on Locked On Fantasy Baseball, we do waiver wire twice a week and we go in depth. We give you, usually about 10 names of guys that we think could, help you that are hot. And add those guys. Just play around with the lineup. Take what you need out of those guys. We give you guys every position. We give you guys power guys, speed guys, runs guys, RBIs guys, average guys. So, just take those names and get them into your lineups. But I have one last guy for you here, and it's Andres Gimenez. Somebody one of my bold claims of the season was that Gimenez was going to be the best second baseman in all of fantasy baseball, and boy, has that one fallen flat on its face. Yeah, listen, we hit some, and we miss on others. So Gimenez, 60 runs on the season, 12 homers, 49 RBIs, 22 steals, 234 batting average. And the Guardians just weren't as good as anybody thought they were going to be. And Gimenez has really slowed down of late, too. I'll give you the last 30 days for, Andres Gimenez. 13 runs, 3 homers, 9 RBIs, 5 steals, 237 batting average. Kind of just time to trim the fat. He's 76% owned. That's way too high. Trim the fat. Unless you really need like steals and runs. He could steal the bags. As I mentioned, I think, what did I say, 22 on the year? 22 steals on the year. So if you need the speed and maybe need some runs, the guy that's hitting high in the lineup, you could keep Gimenez. But there's a lot of he hasn't even been. They moved him down. I think he was sitting second for a while, but it looks like he's sitting 5th. So I honestly, probably out of all the bats on this list, besides Ty France, I think Gimenez is probably near the top of the line of dropping for me. If I had to throw out a drop-o-meter number on Gimenez, I'm talking probably about a 7 or an 8, to be honest with you. I really, I had him on a couple of teams. I finally cut bait with him, and I said adios. And it's just the kind of move you got to make. So I'm not going to keep preaching to you guys here. I kind of already gave you the rant. If you got any specific questions, join Matt and I in subtext. Once again, completely free for 14 days, and you guys can hop on in there, ask us anything you need. If you like the experience, we definitely, would appreciate it if you guys stay. If not, you know what? Come back around next year when fantasy baseball fires up, because that's when you're really going to need us. That's when all of, the great advice comes out. Man, I know I talked about missing on Gimenez, but we hit on a lot of guys coming into this year. And I think that's going to be the place to be, going into next baseball season. Is the Diamond Club on the Subtext platform is just really, useful. And Matt and I, everyone there has loved it. We've given a lot of great advice. Getting to know you guys is awesome. We really want to know more besides, the fantasy baseball stuff. Matt's having another kid. We've, been chopping it up with a bunch of other guys that have kids. I mean, I don't have kids yet, but you know what? We talk about other stuff. We even, throw a little football stuff in there. If you guys want to talk football, we'll talk a little bit of football with you in the off season. But guys, that is all for me today. Thank you for, getting through this episode with me here, going by myself. So just make sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Also, shout out to our everydayers and new listeners for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. And we're going to have a new episode on Monday for you. Once again, we're going to be talking about those waiver wire guys and, who to trim the fat for. If you're getting rid of these guys, who you're going to pick up, lock in with us on Monday, and we'll make sure you have all of those names. But guys, until then, see you.